Welcome, my friends. I'm Dave Champion, and this is my amazing co-host, Bill Carnes, and together we are totally unprepared. Well, nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Been 3 weeks?
Two.
Okay.
Well, I was not here the past 2 weeks, so yeah, 3 weeks ago was the last show I was here for.
So, the second last show, we didn't do it all.
Correct.
Last
2 weeks
week,
ago.
correct,
2 weeks ago.
I did a Dave Champion show,
Which I watched.
where I talked about the young man getting falsely arrested.
Yes, you did. Which, by the way, is by no means the only false arrest in the last 3 weeks.
No.
I mean, our email is full of these false arrests just in the last 3 weeks. And we're talking multi-million-dollar lawsuits, on top of the one I'm going to file.
Right. We should get on with that.
There's some things brewing right
Okay,
there.
all right. Just more to talk about on the show.
Know?
All right. Yeah. This agency right now, the Nye County Sheriff's Department, under the I can't use the word leadership. What would you call it?
Direction.
Under the administration of?
Under
Sharon
the
Worley?
gravitational pull of?
Oh my God. Just horrific. We have a little more.
Now you and I learn a lot about what happens. There's a lot of times with departments, be it a sheriff's department or any governmental agency. We'll just use sheriffs at this point because that's a topic. The people might be unhappy, like the citizenry might be unhappy from things that they're seeing. In this case, you and I are getting all kinds of information and stuff coming our way and in other ways in the county that really it's imploding from the inside.
Yes.
Is really where it seems to be happening.
Let me even support that. Virtually all of the deputies that work for the Nye County Sheriff's Department understand that Dave Berukowitz is the de facto sheriff, that he runs the agency. Sharon is just the figurehead. And they know how manipulative and vicious he is, and so they will not speak. If he says X, they will not say, that's not true, it's actually Y. They won't say that to him because they don't want to make an enemy of him. They know how vengeful he is. Right? You're either on his team or you're gone. Okay? Or you're going to be punished somehow.
You can get some indications of that because he's in charge of putting out press releases with arrests and other things.
Sure.
And when there's a response, seeing the response that comes back out, you can see that sort of personality trait.
Well, here's where I was going with this. As I said on another show, in very colorful language, Dave Berukowitz has said that I am a expletive liar. Okay. Now, nobody responds to him at the time. Okay. But the deputies then get together later when Berukowitz is not there or they're not online or whatever the circumstance is. And what the deputies are saying to each other is, you know, I watched that. I can't figure out what Champion is lying about. So they're saying this to one another, right? But no one will say it to him because of how vengeful he is.
You know, if you thought about it in medieval times, when you've got a king, and then underneath the king you've got his generals, in this case a sergeant, and he's just you've got all these various competing tyrannical interests that are going on.
Yes.
And the troops are not always gung-ho about this, but you know, if you back off, or if you give them any guff, they're going to chop your head off.
Right.
And in this case, end your career.
Keep your head down, your mouth shut. I hear no evil, I see no evil, and I just show up for my job, do my job, and go home.
And that still might not be good enough.
Right. You don't typically incur the wrath of all these people at the top who are doing these ugly, destructive things. So we have a little bit more on the Shane case, Shane being the young man who was falsely arrested.
Now, let's catch everybody up just quickly. Shane is a young man who was arrested and accused not by his young ex-wife,
Correct.
Both very young people.
The 911 call was generated.
Was generated by the ex-wife's roommate's girlfriend, wife, whatever she is.
Yeah. The person with whom the roommate's having a relationship.
Right, and literally on the phone, calling and saying, they're in his truck, he's beating her up, took her by force with a gun, while And that's all in this declaration of arrest, which, by the way, was signed under the penalty of perjury.
We have this. We bring these things in so that you know that we're not
stabbing at it.
Pahrump does a lot of gossip stuff, so we actually have the documents.
Here are all the Facebook message time-stamped with everything, pictures, all kinds of stuff.
Between Shane and his ex-wife.
Yeah. So at the moment that the phone call is going out, oh, this dastardly deed is going on, Shane was actually missing a call from the very same person
he's supposed to be beating.
Yeah.
She's calling him. She is not in his presence.
Yeah.
She is calling him through Facebook, through the app on her phone.
Mm-hmm.
She's calling him on Facebook. Shane, talk to me, right? Ringing his app on his phone because they're not together.
Right. Yeah.
At the same time the 911 call is going in, they're 1 minute apart, I should say. The very last phone call from the alleged victim, the ex-wife, the last phone call from her to Shane was 1 minute before the 911 call went out.
Which would have been at the time this alleged ass whipping is going on.
Right, because in the 911 call, this third party is telling the sheriffs, yeah, she's in the truck with him and he's beating her up.
Yeah, which she tried to call again an hour and a half after that, hour and 26 minutes after that, and then
assures him, I did not call the police on you.
Yeah.
So you can tell it was a contrived thing, right?
And then all kinds starting about, I don't know, 3 in the afternoon the next day, because all the arrests went down about 1 o'clock that morning, and starting 3 that afternoon, just message after message after message. I didn't call the cops. I didn't tell them anything. Please respond. Blah, blah, blah.
Please respond. Now, if he just beat her up, why would she be saying please? Now, also, this is the declaration of arrest filed by the arresting officer. It contains essentially the allegations of the third party, which from here you can't even necessarily, from what's written here, this is an incredibly weak affidavit of probable cause.
And in fact, if you read deep enough into it, you can find exoneration and absence of probable cause.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is like, this guy said and this guy said, so I'm going to arrest you. You know, there's an active duty police officer that follows the Dave Champion's Liberty page. And recently on another post unrelated to this, he said, I consider my job to investigate and determine when there is probable cause to make an arrest, and to investigate and determine when there is no probable cause, and so not to make an arrest.
Correct.
This deputy, now I understand, I shouldn't say I understand, I'm pretty confident the way this goes down, that Brent Moody, who's a problem case all unto himself, Brent Moody pretty much left these deputies with the impression that this young man was to go to jail. So I think the deputies are trying to shoehorn nothing into something, and
again, so they don't get their head chopped off.
Right. So the undersheriff is not mad at them because he left the scene after he stuck a gun in the young man's face and pulled him out of his. Then he and lectured him like he was daddy. He then got in his car and left the deputies there to handle the case. Okay. So and he said, Brent Moody said to Shane, "Do you know why you're going to jail?" Okay, so clearly the decision had already been made, right, by Brent Moody. And Shane said, no, I don't. And he said, because you beat the hell out of that girl, okay? So do you know why you're going to jail? Clearly he left the deputies with the impression he wanted this young man to go to jail. Now.
And in the declaration, it says the girl stated she had various injuries. I'm not going to get into the specifics. But the arresting officer who wrote this report said that he didn't see any signs of injury on her at all. Later, it was claimed that he had pulled a black .22 caliber pistol. You talked about that on the show, like you're going to know that. He didn't own one. They found a different gun, but it wasn't in his truck.
And it was tan.
Said he showed me a Facebook message which corroborated his statements that he wasn't lying, and with the timestamps on there. He denied pulling a gun and pointing it. The kid that was arrested, Shane, also claimed he did not own a .22 pistol. He gave consent to search the back seat of his vehicle for the gun.
Which, by the way, is an erroneous thing. He didn't give permission to search the back seat.
Okay.
He gave permission to search the entire truck and his home, which the deputies did.
Okay. Which the deputies did not, they were unable to locate a .22 caliber black pistol. So all of these things say, no probable cause, no probable cause. Our case getting weaker.
No physical evidence to support the verbal allegations.
Yeah, and then it came down to the very last sentence after, okay, we're weakening our case, weakening, statement by statement. Then it finishes with, Shane was subsequently arrested on the above charge and transported to NCDC for booking. I'm articulating how there's nothing but holes in this entire story. No evidence at all. But my last statement is, I booked him.
And probably more important than all of the holes is the fact that the deputy had seen this thread, which shows that the alleged victim and the alleged perpetrator were not together at the time the call came into 911. And of course,
or even immediately prior to that.
Right. You call 911 after something has happened, or during,
yes.
Perhaps in the case of a domestic.
During or after.
Normally it's after. Sometimes in the case of a domestic, it's during. Okay. In this case, the call came before the alleged attacker and the alleged victim were even in the same place in town. Okay. Claiming he was doing these things to her when he was still on another part of town. And the deputy saw the evidence of that, which completely destroys probable cause. There is no way for him to be on the other side of town when the allegation came that he was already doing it and to find probable cause for us. There's no way to do that. And the deputy admits in his declaration of arrest that he had seen this thread, which would completely destroy probable cause. Another false arrest.
Something tells me, and I'm only guessing here, if Brent Moody were not involved in this case, that Shane likely would have not gotten arrested.
I imagine so.
But hey, he's going in. Find a way to make it happen. That's the kind of bullshit that will happen in these sorts of cases when you get small departments and, honest to God, people that are making emotional decisions that are not based on probable cause, things that need to end. This sort of thing needs to end. It's going to cost us millions.
Oh, this case.
These sorts of cases.
I think the civil suit in this case is going to be between $2 and $5 million.
Unreal. We'll be right back.
We're back. We'll be right back right after this. What is up with people becoming nasty and ugly, vitriolic and insulting simply because they don't like the truth about their chosen candidate for president? What I mean by that is last week I detailed a list of 39 campaign promises made by Donald Trump, and 33 of them were under the category of will not do when should he become president. 2 of them were if he does them in secret. Once they become public, they'll be declared unconstitutional by the courts. And 4 out of 39 he actually could do if he's so disposed should he win the presidency. And the response I got to that part of the show was statements such as, oh, he can't do them because you say so? Who the hell are you to say what Donald Trump can do if he gets elected? And comments along that vein. So I can't, in this show with a 13-minute segment, I cannot detail why he cannot do those 33 things. Time doesn't allow for that. That's another thing. People get very frustrated. They want me to explain everything as if I own the TV station and I can do a 6-hour show. Sorry, I don't own the TV station. Bill and I have an hour. I have 13 minutes unto myself. Also, I want to make a point. Bill, who is much more, he's in tune with how political winds blow, he informed me that a lot of people are going to be very angry at me if they're Trump supporters. And so he and I talked about that a little bit, and I wanted to make the point that people who take this personally about their guy, Donald Trump, are missing the message. The message isn't about Trump per se. He's the one making these campaign promises right now today in this campaign. But if it was the same kind of campaign promises, if it was made 4 years ago, or 4 years from now, or 8 years from now, the same campaign promises, I would be making the same exact statements. So it's not about Trump. So if you're emotionally hooked up to Trump, it's not about you. It's about the law. Isn't that an important thing? Or do we throw the law away? Do we throw the Constitution away if it's your candidate? That's up to you. All right, so let me go through just a few of these in the time that I have remaining. One of the things that was said was that he would fix the background check system for firearms purchases to make sure that the states give the federal government all the information they need. And my comment was he doesn't understand how that system works. We have a system in the United States called federalism. And that means that the federal government has its areas of authority and the states have their areas of authority. And while they have blurred a bit over the years, there are still some areas where they are absolutely distinct, such as the Constitution does not give the federal government the power to demand that the states give the federal government any information at all ever. Okay? I hope you understand that. The federal government does not have the authority to pass legislation that requires a state government to give the feds any information about what goes on within a state. Anytime when the states do that, it's by agreement. Okay? The states don't have to do it. So Donald Trump cannot fix that because it's outside our constitutional scheme. The states give the federal government, as far as the firearms background checks, the states give the federal government what the states have chosen to give them. And that's all the federal government can get. And the President of the United States can't change the Constitution, the system of federalism, and can't make the states do anything that the Constitution doesn't allow the federal government to mandate. It's not going to happen. It's our Constitution. Don't get mad at me. Sorry, Trump said something he can't do. Okay? Cut the budget 20% by simply negotiating. Okay? First of all, the president has absolutely no say in the budget. Zero. The president writes a proposed budget as the executive branch and sends it over to Congress. Sometimes Congress pulls bits and pieces of it from it. Sometimes Congress ignores it. But the power of the purse is Congress. Congress creates all the budgets. Okay? Sorry, the president doesn't have any say in that. So when he says he's going to reduce the cost of the budget by 20% simply by negotiating, he doesn't have a hand in that either. Okay? Simply by negotiating. There are laws about how federal contracts are to be let. They're very precise and detailed and voluminous regulations about how contracts are to be sought, how they are to be, the proposals are to be viewed, how they go through a review process. Other people have, other interested parties that might want to bid have comment. It's an entirely, and it's all mandated by statute and then buttressed by regulation. And the president does not have the latitude to just say, the hell with all that. I'm going to, because I say I'm a good negotiator, I'm going to negotiate this. The laws of the United States do not permit the president to do that. Okay? Now, get rid of the national debt in 8 years. Okay, look. Again, this is like the firearms background thing. He has no idea how the system works. You might be shocked to find out that the United States government, right now, in 2016, is still paying interest on the loans that the government took out for World War I. Okay? The debt is so horrendous. I'm not saying that making progress on the debt is not a laudable goal. It is. Okay? But if somebody said to me, look, I have a plan where I want to retire the national debt in 60 years, I would say, let's talk about that. Because when you look at the debt, and you look at the gross domestic product, and you look at the tax base of the federal government and so forth, a 60-year plan, we can talk. Okay? That's perhaps doable. 8 years? It's ridiculous. It's like somebody making $25,000 a year. They have $100,000 in debt, excluding anything like a house, just consumer credit debt. And somebody comes along and says, we're going to clean this up in a year. Okay? Not doable. And that 8-year claim is simply financially, on a dollars and cents basis, absurd. Create many new tariffs, and he's been talking in the area of 32 to 35%. Again, the president has bupkis to do with tariffs. The president doesn't pass tariffs, Congress does. And the United States government, since World War II, on the whole, there have been some notable exceptions, but on the whole is absolutely adverse to tariffs. Okay? Plus, tariffs don't necessarily solve a problem. And I can't get into the economics, I don't have the time, but oftentimes all tariffs do is put more money in the federal government's budget or in their revenue stream. It doesn't actually solve problems. And nevertheless, the president has zero authority over tariffs. Build a wall. I'm sorry, guys, as much as some of you may think that's an absolutely fantastic idea, the president cannot build a wall unless Congress passes a law authorizing the president to do it. And Congress is overwhelmingly, even Republicans are overwhelmingly against building a wall. It's never going to happen. And if Donald Trump does, presidents have done this a couple times, they've tried to do an end run around Congress on something trying to appropriate funds from someplace else. And Congress resents that because the Constitution places the power for these things with Congress, your elected representatives. So Congress has said in those cases where presidents tried an end run, they attach to a big spending bill, like a defense authorization bill that you can't turn down because then the military would stop functioning. They attach something that says not one penny of federal money shall be spent building a wall. And you're done. It's as simple as that. And citizenship birthright. Okay, first of all, that is a judicial interpretation of the 14th Amendment. So, the president has no authority to override a judicial determination of what the Constitution means. It's as simple as that. And although if he were to win, Donald Trump would certainly have the ability to appoint or to suggest Supreme Court nominees that the Senate would then have the power of advising consent upon, he still would never in his lifetime have enough votes in the Supreme Court to alter the determination the 14th Amendment offers birthright citizenship. I mean, it might, again, perhaps, arguments in both directions, a laudable goal. Isn't going to happen. It certainly isn't within the power of the president. Defunding Planned Parenthood. Need I say it? The budget, funding, not what the president does. He gets a gigantic spending bill, trillions of dollars. He doesn't have line item veto. Sorry. And if he doesn't sign it, it's going to be another one of those government shutdowns. So I'm okay with government shutdowns, don't get me wrong. But if Congress says, sorry, it's in there, 72% of Congress voted to put it in there, we're not taking it out, sorry, he's going to have to sign the budget bill. I mean, the nation can't come to a screeching halt. Rebuilding America's aging infrastructure for 1/3 the amount. Okay, first of all, again, not his job. It is his job to do it if Congress appropriates the money and says the money's to be used for this, that, and the other. Short of that, he's got no game. People think the president is a dictator. I've really come to that conclusion here in 2016. People mistakenly think the president's a dictator. His job is to faithfully execute the laws of the Union. Period. Issue an executive order to have all cop killers given the death penalty. Sorry, the overwhelming number of cops that are killed in America are local cops. There are not that many cops killed, let me be clear on that to begin with, but almost all of them are local cops. Executive orders only apply to the federal government. So when the state of Nebraska or the state of California or the state of New Jersey prosecutes a cop killer, federal law isn't even involved. Again, I don't know whether Donald Trump thinks he's a dictator, but the American people seem to think the president, whoever it is a dictator. Open up the libel laws. Again, same story. Libel laws are all state laws. The president has no authority to reach out into a state and change the libel laws. Zero. It's mind-boggling that such a statement was even made. Bring back torture of captured prisoners. After what the Bush administration did, Congress passed 2 additional laws that make sure that the executive branch can never again have somebody trump up a totally BS legal opinion from the DOJ and say, oh, look, he says that I can torture. And so now we can order torture. Congress passed 2 laws in the wake of the Bush administration, making sure that the executive branch can never, ever do that again. It makes it utterly clear that for a president to authorize any part of the government, CIA, NSA, military intelligence, you name it, if the president authorizes them to torture, he will be in violation of federal law. Okay? Do we want a lawbreaker? I don't know. But my point is that he says he would bring it back. Apparently, he's unaware that Congress has said in 2 different statutes it will never, ever be brought back again. Stop and frisk. Whole incredibly unconstitutional. In fact, a federal court in his own state, his state of residence, said it's unconstitutional. And his point of view is, I want to bring it back. How do you bring back or amplify something that the courts have already said is unconstitutional? We'll be back right after this.
Welcome back. Let's rant, shall we? You know what really grinds my gears? Emotion over intellect, and being able to decipher the way things actually are. You know, I had an instance about 15 or so years ago. I happened to be managing a company, and one of the divisions that we had there, one of the many things within that division, printed T-shirts, custom order T-shirts. I actually had a union, a local union, come to us and say that they wanted to get some T-shirts printed for some event, whatever it was. However, the T-shirts that they wanted it printed on had to be 6.1 ounce, 100% cotton. They had to be made in the USA in a union shop. You know how many of those there are? One. It's called Union Apparel or Union Shirts. What I think it's Union Apparel was the name of the company at the time. So I took the bid and I looked at it, I'm like, it's amazing. Just the difference in the price of the substrate being the actual material you're printing on, in this case, 6.1 ounce 100% cotton T-shirts, was so expensive. It was 3 times that of a Gildan or a Hanes shirt of the same quality, same specs. So I presented that to the client. They asked, why is there such a major difference? Well, because it costs them so much more to produce that shirt in this country based on all the regulations that this country has. And on top of that, they're paying very high-end union wages to people that are making these shirts. So there you go. Of course, that's what they went with, which was fine. I mean, we did the shirt and made the profit. Everything was great. But what I'm getting at is this. The garment industry in this country was done away with long ago because of over-regulation from the federal government. Things like you take out a huge sheet of material, wave that thing out, get all of the junk off of it. Well, that junk goes into the air. Oh, that's going to cause respiratory problems. Oh, you're going to have to wear all these expensive respirators. You're going to need an HVAC system. You're going to need to have HEPA filters in there. You got to change them every 15 days, whatever it is. And they're adding all of these various regulations, and then they have all these inspectors that come in, and then you're getting fined for all of these things if any one little thing is in there to justify the expense of the organization, whatever government entity it is that's coming in. Then you start getting states, California's a big one, that want to come in and start regulating things into non-existence. Then you see people complaining about things like, why don't we have manufacturing in this country anymore? Why is everything made in China or Pakistan or wherever else? The reason is the government's not getting in the way of industry there. The government is paving the way for industry there. And if you get enough good industry going, it becomes quite self-regulating. It has virtually ever since the turn of the 20th century. It begins to get self-regulating, and they compete, and things get better. So if you know why we don't have any sort of industry left in America, you can thank the government for getting far too involved in that and over-regulating. When you start hearing things about wanting to charge tariff fees, such as Dave spoke about in his rant, adding tariffs on these cheap products, say from China or India or Pakistan that are coming in. Even if they end up paying those high tariff rates, where does the money go? It goes into the hands of the government, and what do they do with it? They get bigger and even more powerful. What are they going to do with that? They're going to suppress us. They're going to suppress industry. They're going to suppress rights. They're going to overregulate everything. So the idea that, well, if we elect the right president, or if we elect the right person in Congress, or we elect the right governor, we're going to be able to change things. Until you understand what the problem is and how it came around, from there, you're going to have to figure out what we can do. Oops, I got rid of the clock. What we can do to actually fix the problem. That's where we need to be. So, Dave, let's talk just a little bit about industry, where it's gone, why it's gone, and the government that got rid of it.
Complex subject, but I do want to validate your self-regulatory comment. Two industries that are completely self-regulating is the skydiving enterprise, which is, I wouldn't know if that's an enterprise, but people do charge for the lessons and the flights, going up and all that. They self-regulate, and in most of the larger metropolitan centers, the tattoo industry self-regulates. Now, there are places like, say, Clark County here in Nevada where they are regulated, but in places where they are not regulated, they have come to self-regulate. And the reason they've done that is a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't want to be regulated. It's the fear of being regulated, so they get together as an industry and say, let's do it ourselves rather than having government inspectors crawling up our rear end.
One of the most popular industries in the free world that you wouldn't necessarily think of as an industry that would self-regulate is the adult film industry.
I knew you were going to give that as an example.
Yeah,
they did.
Because they were some of the first ones to come out and say, look, we are self-regulating. And it's interesting, there's a bill that's going to be on the ballot in California for all of the people of California to vote on.
Yeah.
Should the adult industry in California be forced that the male actors need to wear condoms?
Yeah, I saw that.
And the question is, why in the hell would you ask everybody there? That would be like, everybody vote. If the taxi industry should have a green headrest.
Yeah.
What the hell is it everybody's
But that's
business?
how California does business.
Yeah, well, so anyhow, there are examples, and there's many examples of self-regulated industries. And honestly, God, competition helps breed that. Who's better? Who's better? Who can do it a little bit better?
Right.
Not necessarily cheaper. That's more, usually products, you'll find a little bit more in the cheaper, but services, who's better?
Right. And, industries that are choked financially by the regulatory burden have less money to compete with. They have less money to innovate with. Now, you gave the example of, shake out the sheet of cotton and all the dust goes in the air. And I think most people would say something like, if that's some sort of carcinogen or that powder causes problems with the respiratory system, we definitely want to do something about that. But the government never asked the industry, look, you, the industry, we're going to tell you so you have to do something, okay? We're going to give you, say, 24 months to come up with something. And if we like it, we'll leave you alone as long as you all agree on an industry-wide basis, form an association, you all contract that you're going to buy this whatever it is that solves the problem. We're good. Other than that, we're going to start sending inspectors in, this and that.
Being a parent is one of those things where oftentimes you go in and you don't necessarily need to lay down the law to your kid. Have a discussion with them and say, okay, based on this, that, and the other, what do you think should get done?
Right. And I think another one of these things is once you lay down the standard, okay, you don't necessarily need all these inspections. What you need is a system where somebody can make a complaint saying, we understand that the solution to this is A, everyone's agreed to this, they're doing B, or they're not doing A, okay? That can be anonymous. I'm not anonymous in the sense that it's just an anonymous voice on the phone, but the agency, then when they send somebody out, does not say, Bill Carnes said, because that's what people fear, they're going to lose their jobs, right? It's, we have a report that you're not doing A. We're here to find out. They don't need to send inspectors in all the time.
In most cases, that actually is the way it is. I remember getting a visit from OSHA one time. Now, I was actually, for this corporation, I was actually in charge of all the safety and OSHA regulations and such as that. We got a report. Now, I had 3 or 4 regulatory agencies come in back to back to back because I fired a guy. I knew where it was coming from. He was the only person who left, and he was disgruntled. Horrible employee, and this is how he repaid it. So Of course, we never get fined or stuck for anything because we're up to speed, but something interesting. OSHA is something everybody seems to be afraid of.
That's true.
But I got to tell you, it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
If you actually want to do things right, you don't need to be afraid of OSHA. You can call them up and say, hey, we want to make sure that we are in compliance. Could you send somebody out and help consult with us to make sure that we're in compliance? Once you ask for them to come in, they cannot fine you.
Right.
They are there to consult and help you because you want to learn. And they say, okay, well, this. Now, you need to get all that stuff fixed. But during this phase of we want you to come in and help us become compliant, they cannot fine you.
Yes, and I've not been through it, but several managers or executives of companies that I'm familiar with have gone down that road. And one of the reports that I've received back is that I think they call them auditors that come out.
Yes.
They're not fixated on a particular solution. So if they say that hot wire down there can't be there, they don't say, and the solution is you'll do this. They say, how can this be resolved so that hot wire is not where it doesn't belong? Well, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could route it completely different, or we could shut this operation down and do it on that wall. And the OSHA person is like, any of those is fine as long as we don't have a hot wire down here. Yeah. So they're fairly flexible.
A much better way to operate for you business owners out there. Something else we want to talk about with industry is, you know who the biggest car maker in the United States is today?
I do, but only because you told me.
Toyota. Toyota makes more cars in the United States than any of the big three do.
Right.
Matter of fact, I'll give you an example. Now, Ford, GM, Chrysler have all moved a whole bunch of their operations outside of this country. They can't afford to do business in this country anymore. Part of it due to regulation. The other part because union wages have gotten to the point where they cannot pay.
Right.
They cannot afford all the union wages. You know, one of the things Chrysler does quite a bit of, they have engines and in some cases certain models of cars and trucks really, made in Mexico, like the Hemi. If you get one of their sportier cars with a Hemi in it, the engine's made in Mexico, loaded up on train cars, run north to Canada where the cars are built and the drivetrains are put together there. Then another train back into the States and then out to the dealers.
And here's an interesting part. A lot of the parts that go into the engine in Mexico are made here by independent contractors.
Yes.
So they send, thousands of different companies send their parts down to Mexico. They assemble the Hemi motor, as you say, they send it to Canada, then they stick it in a car.
Yeah. So
they're international vehicles.
They really are. And I'm just using Chrysler as an example. GM, Ford, all do it, but there are Toyotas that are made almost entirely, completely assembled, generally in the southeastern United States. They've got Tennessee, I believe in Kentucky as well. The Camry, if I remember correctly, is actually built in the old Saturn plant in southeastern Tennessee.
You know what would be an interesting study? Why Toyota can build so many cars domestically here and the big three don't or can't?
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting study to find out.
I would imagine that study's probably been done and available out there somewhere. It's just a matter of looking it up.
Or done and locked away.
So if you're able to do things without getting fined, you don't have so much regulation, you operate above board, then we don't need to have all the regulation and all the garbage, and we don't have to worry about excessive wage and benefits and things like that, America will start to build. But it starts with, I guess, getting our own acts together.
Yep. And we'll be back.
Oh my goodness, Dave. Welcome back. Segment 4. This is where we have the opportunity to go through some emails, which we're going to address today. Big topic that's been up for the last...
a lot of emails at lunch.
Yeah, we did. Dave and Bill Show at gmail.com. That is where you send your show email inquiries. Please send them. We like getting them. Then, if you want to go online and check out any shows, and I would say our entire catalog is there, but it's not because I've been remiss in uploading a few. I need to get that done.
As have I on YouTube.
As a matter of fact, I got a request about that last night in one of these. At totallyunprepared.info, we will get our collective fecal matter collected into an organized fashion and get our shows out to you.
Yes.
On top of that, we want to update the disaster that we have going on over here, the carpet, and now with lighting update, it has changed. It has changed in the last
Has
3
it? What
weeks.
happened?
It has. There's more dust on it now.
Oh, okay.
There's
All right.
more dust on it now.
Oh, by the way, before we kick off whatever we're going to talk about, because this is, even though people watch it nationally and internationally via YouTube and Facebook, this is a local show, really. I got to tell you, I got off of Rise Broadband this morning and got on the over-the-air Valley Electric internet. Okay, now, you know, within a year, they intend to have the whole valley fibered up and fiber right into the house, and then they're going to have, 50 megabytes per second up and down.
They'll actually, if you pay the highest premium rate for their Platinum Premium program, it's 1 gig up and down.
Oh, really?
Per second.
But I actually got rid of Rise, which was horrible. Their consistency was, nights and weekends when they were closed, their service always gacked up. I was paying for like the 10 megabyte plan, which I think they only, the highest one is 15. That's the highest they offer.
20 is the highest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And nights and weekends, 2.6, 3.7 when they were closed.
See, now, I was on the same system, still am on the same system. However, I live far more rurally than you do.
Yes.
And there's not nearly as many people on that tower. So I generally get about 80% to 90% of what I'm paying for.
I was, and you can't call during the hours that they've choked you down to say a quarter of what you're paying for,
right?
Because they're closed. And then Monday morning, I'm all fired up to call them, but I do a speed check and it's like 9.6, right? Okay, so, but inconsistent, horrible, terrible customer service. Glad they're gone. The guy comes in, wonderful guy from Valley Electric. I mean, super nice, super informative. Didn't take him long, very clean and orderly. Sit down at my computer, speed check, 24.56 up and like 24.38 down. It's just like,
good.
It was beautiful.
Now you can stream the Seattle Seahawks games.
So here's my unpaid Valley Electric commercial.
Okay, so what we want to address is this whole thing that started weeks ago with Colin Kaepernick not standing up for the national anthem and now taking a knee. This has gone across all kinds of sporting venues.
Yep.
It has also gotten some of the Hollywood, I don't want to call them elite because really I still look at them as I do in Shakespeare's day, the Hollywood crowd, I would just say nicely. And it's also crept into the military, and people are getting so incredibly pissed off about this. And really what they're doing is they're relating that the national anthem equals support for U.S. troops, which is not true. The national anthem is not a memorial for U.S. troops. The memorial for U.S. troops, that song is called TAPS.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying this to try to be derogatory, but don't attach yourself to the national anthem and bring it in somewhere where it was not intended. It is not. Of course, it was written during the battle, during the
bombing, the shelling of Fort McHenry by the British during the War of 1812.
1812. Thank you very much. So we talk about bombs bursting in air and all that good stuff. Flag was still there, which it was written about a wartime event, but it is for the entire nation. And what we've got is we've got people, started with Colin Kaepernick, or he was the most noted one to start this, and it has really gotten sweeping across the country, across all sorts of different divides, regardless of skin color or heritage or religious background, whatever it is. And essentially what it has come down to, Dave, is people that are upset that this country is not operating on all 12 cylinders. People are not being treated the way that they're supposed to be treated. They're not being treated equally across the country.
Correct.
And this is the way that people are showing, look, I respect the founding of the country. I respect what the country is supposed to stand for. But I am opposing the way it's operating right now today. And that is what's happening. And people are, that slap in the face to people that fought for your right to do that. You should be happy. Because I got to tell you, for those of you who've gone overseas and fought, none of your parents and none of your grandparents ever fought for freedom in the American way. You fought over land wars, banker wars, and corporate interests. And that's just where the bear shits in the woods.
Yeah. The last war where American servicemen fought for America against an adversary who had come after America or Americans was the War of 1812.
I think it was the Mexican-American War, was it not?
There was the bogus story about them blowing up the ship in the harbor.
Oh wait, there was another one of the. Yeah, we're not talking about not the Gulf of Tonkin. That was all the garbage that got us into Vietnam.
Right.
Yeah.
This is another contrived conflict where the government told the people of the nation a story that America had been attacked by the bombing of this. I think it was one of the old steam vessels. And it wasn't true.
And keep this in mind. Well, what about World War II when the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor? Okay, let's talk about that. If you've ever done anything other than read the narrative in your history book, your U.S. history book, when you're a high school junior, you would learn
there's a source of authoritative history.
There was something called the Trilateral Agreement shared between Germany, Japan, and Italy. Mm-hmm. And if any one of them were attacked or got into war with another country, all three of them were going to be that happy trilateral gang, and now you are against all three. And it was supposed to be
mutual aid.
Mutual aid. It was supposed to be a deterrent for any country going to war. But if Roosevelt, who really wanted to get involved in this European land war that was going on,
and Hitler gave him no excuse.
None at all. So how do we do it? Well, why don't we effect a trilateral agreement? Yeah. We can take time and piss Japan off enough to get them to do something. Yeah. And all of the evidence is there. This is historic, factual evidence that shows this is in fact what went down. A lot of people don't know this, but it is the God's honest truth.
A senior naval officer, I think they had the rank of Commodore back then, actually wrote something I forget now. It's been too many years since I've researched it, like a 19-point plan that would force Japan's hand to attack the United States. And FDR went right down the bullet list.
Every single one of them.
And implemented them against Japan and the written plan was designed to get Japan to attack America. And FDR marched right to, this is not them attacking us. This is us attacking them.
Yeah, and keep in mind, interesting enough, all the ships that were in Pearl Harbor, there were 3 aircraft carriers that were stationed in Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that on the morning of December 7th, 1941, not a single one was in port?
Oh, and those that were in port 3 days before Pearl Harbor, the admiral for the Pacific Fleet had personally asked Roosevelt for permission not to take them out of the area of Pearl, but to bring them out of their confines of the harbor so they could maneuver and the damage would be less.
Yeah.
They all knew it was coming.
That was 2 out of the 3. The third one was sailing back from the West Coast.
Roosevelt said no, leave all the ships in harbor. So the dramatic damage that was done was Roosevelt's plan. He condemned those men to die. Some men were going to die no matter. Roosevelt's plan guaranteed some Americans were going to die. He planned to murder Americans. Mm-hmm. So many more were murdered because he refused to let those ships come out of the harbor.
Yeah, and if it had not been for JFK putting a stop to it, you would have had a whole bunch more killed.
Operation Northwoods.
By us, yes, going into Cuba. Anyhow, my point being, people are reading into all of these things like Kaepernick's a Muslim and he's this. He's not. He's Luther. As a matter of fact, his tattoos have psalms in them.
Christian psalms, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that people are just jumping on these ridiculous bandwagons and not going into it and not listening. Not listening. Okay, the girl that was in the Navy Reserves that was in Pearl Harbor that failed to salute, right? Why? She was very articulate about it, and I'm going to paraphrase. Not happy with the way that people are not being treated equally in this country. The government needs to get their crap together, and we all need to come together to help make that change to where everybody is treated equally as an American. That's really the message that's coming across. And I got to tell you, I support that people feel that way because there's millions of us that do. I feel that way. You feel that way. Whether we stand up or not for the national anthem, that is a way, if you decide as an individual, that's the way you want to show, yes, I'm still standing up in respect for the national anthem, or I'm taking a knee, that's the big thing. I'm taking a knee in respect, but I'm not standing up with my hand over my heart to show I feel that this country should be doing better. It stands for better, and damn it ought to be doing better.
Now, you and I have a slightly different opinion on what I'm about to say. I believe there's also a huge racist component. I think based on what I see people saying, I'm not just waving my magic mental wand and saying I think people are racist. I'm looking at what they're doing and saying. For instance, I think a lot of people, Kaepernick's half black. I don't want to hear what he has to say. Kaepernick's talking about black people. I don't want to hear it. We have the case down in Texas where a Texas, was it a Pop Warner team? 11 and 12-year-olds. The entire team and the coach took a knee during the national anthem. They were threatened. 11 and 12-year-old kids were threatened with lynchings. What are lynchings? Okay, what are they harken back to? Okay, so to me, I think a huge component of this whole issue that Kaepernick started. I agree. There are many people that feel like you just expressed yourself quite eloquently, but I think there's a much larger segment than you would appreciate because you're a good man. I don't think you see the evil in people like I do sometimes. I think there's a huge segment of the world that just their grandparents, their parents, they don't dig black people. And that's the end of the discussion. It doesn't matter how laudable or how meritorious or how credible a story or a point of view may be. You're black, shut the hell up.
And that very well may be true. However, that is not where I am.
I know that.
And I support the people that are showing this by taking a knee or whatever it is they're doing by saying, I love this country, I just don't like the way it operates.
Me too.
We'll be back next week.